Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nozukos Kakane. I'm part of the wonderful team called Trailblazers. Let me introduce you to the team. We've got Lethabo Chawuke, Siyabonga Mdlalose, Mbuyiselo Ndlela, Ephraim Ngwenya, and Sandile Dumisa. Sustainable Development Goals. Where did it start? It started in 1992 in the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. In 2000, the Millennium Development Goals. Finally, 2015, 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals were implemented. The Trailblazers chose to focus on SDG 4, quality education. There are 7 targets and 3 means of implementation. The objective is to ensure that all people have access to quality education, lifelong learning opportunities to reduce gender and income disparities in education. Let me take you through the filtering process. We chose target 4.1, which is free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education. Our indicator, 4.1.2, completion rate, upper secondary education. We use systems thinking to consider multiple perspectives so that we could examine different ideas that influence quality education. We collected reports from the Department of Basic Education, focusing on the Gauteng province. We did a comparison of highest and lowest performing district, looking at the matric results for 2021 to 2023. We were then able to find our filtered area, Johannesburg East District. We then split between suburb and township schools. We were able to then do a data analysis so that we can identify patterns and trends. As mentioned before, our filtered area, Johannesburg East District. In this district, there are areas like Alexander, Sundown, Kempton Park, just to name a few. There are 66 suburban-based high schools, 14 township-based high schools, and unfortunately, this district is the least performing district in 2023 Gauteng matric pass rates.
Having observed a significant educational disparity, particularly between suburban and township schools in the Johannesburg East District, we analyzed the matric pass rates from 2021 to 2023. The data revealed a stark disparity in performance. Suburban schools achieved an average pass rate of 87%, whereas township schools achieved a lower average pass rate of 76%. We also examined trends over this period and found that township schools experienced a 0.13% decline in pass rates, whereas suburban schools enjoyed an 8.32% increase in pass rates. And this leads us to our key question. How does the geographical location of schools impact their performance? To gain a deeper understanding, we reviewed existing literature. Our aim was to analyze and synthesize research on how geographical location influences educational performance. Understanding these disparities is crucial for advancing educational equity. Identifying factors contributing to these differences can shape policies to improve education outcomes regardless of location. These are dramatic things that came out of the review: gaps in funding, resource distribution, and extracurricular programs being the main factors in the disparity. With that being said, we gleaned several important insights where we noted that schools in different geographical areas have varying levels of support, and access to adequate resources is essential for achieving academic success. After carefully establishing our problem statement and conducting a rigorous literature review, we moved forward to create what is known as a stakeholder map. During this stage, we focused on identifying various individuals and organizations that have a significant interest and influence. In this slide, we have illustrated our findings, showcasing several key stakeholders involved, accompanied by a detailed description that outlines their importance and contributions. The far right section of the slide presents a clear indication of the impact each stakeholder has, highlighting both their interest and the degree of influence they possess within this context. For an example, when we look at the school management, principals, and HODs as a stakeholder, their importance is based on operational efficiency and leadership, while their contribution is based on enhancing educational quality And in this case, their level of impact is high on both sides, interest and influence. On this slide, when we look at the parents and community as an example, their importance is based on support system and cultural and social values. And their contribution is all about well-being and advocating equal education. And both their level of interest and influence is medium to high. This comprehensive overview aims to provide a clear understanding of the corroborative landscape surrounding Sustainable Development Goal 4 and how various stakeholders can contribute to its success.
We went and spoke to these stakeholders, the Department of Education, the NGOs, to the actual schools, and spoke to teachers and principals. And in doing so, we got to have some insights. Some of the key themes that came up is socioeconomic factors. The teachers got to tell us that when there's constant financial worry or instability at home, that can affect concentration. And ultimately, it affects your academic performance. Learner-educator ratio is another issue that came up. And I quote, "In a big class size, it can be overwhelming to manage the diverse needs of the learners," close quote. This tells you that when there's few learners in a class, it is a much more organized environment, which is more conducive for learning. Resources is one important role player in education. Your libraries, your computer labs, those make a big difference in what you are able to achieve as a learner. Poor infrastructure can negatively impact on teaching effectiveness and learner performance. And continuing the qualitative research, we did surveys. Our overall survey was 240 with 93 respondents. That gave an overall response rate of 38%. And the responses on feedback and no feedback is shown according to the township schools and suburb schools in the pie charts. The survey feedback still went into these main themes that we saw, that socioeconomic factors can affect the number of people living in a household, access to internet at home, learner-educator ratio, resources still played an important role in what the learners are able to bring. And our overall insights then got to show us after the analysis that learners from suburban schools will often thrive due to stable home environments. When a class is too large, it is almost impossible to give good contact time to each learner, thus resulting in not very good results. Schools with better resources are more capable of effectively supporting learners.
After collecting all the information from the key stakeholders, we then created systems map to understand our system better. Our system boundary is township and suburban high schools. And inside our system, we have government, parents, and SGBs. We also have several subsystems, which include teaching methods, resources, financial resources, human resources, and infrastructure. We also noted that there is a relationship between the subsystems, most importantly, financial resources, which influence all the subsystems. After understanding our system, we then drew a rich picture to visually represent how elements of the system interact and how they affect the system. On top of our rich picture, we have the Department of Education, which is the main stakeholder. We then have suburban schools and township schools. What we noted is that most township schools only depend on government funding, which is based on quintiles. They have to prioritize day-to-day teaching and learning resources like textbooks, chalk, and classroom furniture. Since they have limited funding, they cannot invest in building additional classes to accommodate the growing learner population, leading to overcrowded classrooms. And the problem with overcrowded classroom is that it makes it difficult for teachers to attend to each learner's needs and also instill discipline in class. We found that township schools do not have all the resources required for conducive teaching and learning environment compared to their suburban counterparts. These factors then affect their academic performance. And from this rich picture, we can see that indeed geographic location have an impact on schools' performance.
Now, in efforts to distill information, we'll unpack our benchmarking process, which started off on our chosen area of research in Johannesburg East Educational District. Primarily looking at these three factors, which are academic results, progress rates, as well as number of schools classified under each quintile factor. In reference to a problem statement, which actually aims to analyze the influence of the geographical location factor, we'll split the schools between suburb and township areas. We've then focused on the Johannesburg West Educational District, which is the highest performing area in Gauteng, and further compared that with Western Cape Province, which shares similarities with Gauteng. Both Gauteng and Western Cape show similarities in annual household incomes, level of education per adult, as well as learner education ratio. This is according to the Educational District Atlas report published by the Department of Basic Education. These three factors contribute to these two provinces' educational success and ensures that we can benchmark in the South African context. The benchmarking analysis between suburbs and township reveals interesting yet significant differences in matric pass rates, as well as progressed learner rate, and finally, learner-educator ratios. The average matric pass rate for 2023, which ended at 82.9%, what that actually means is that schools based in suburbs are all above the national average when you put it on a competitive table. In contrast, only Johannesburg West District is above the national average for schools located in townships. The progressed rate, which is at an average of 7.21% nationally, which actually means that we can deduce that schools in townships are above average in progress rates compared to their suburban counterparts. The same can also be said about the learner education ratio, translated into classroom size, which shows far higher ratios in townships compared to suburbs. Now, there are four fundamental insights that are formulated from our benchmarking process in the South African context. Percentages of learners progressed, as well as matric pass rate percentages, have an inversely proportional relationship to each other. Whilst larger classroom sizes, they actually hinder delivery of effective teaching as well as learning outcomes. And lastly, our government's policy to fund schools per quintile actually reveals that schools classified under quintile 1 and 2 are predominantly located in township areas. In identifying best practices globally, the learner education ratio is a very common theme factor that is used throughout the world. The globally recommended ratio currently stands at 25:1. That is recommended by the United Nations, Educational, Scientific, as well as a cultural organization, in short, UNESCO. Currently, as it is in our country, secondary schools average a ratio of 33:1, meaning that we have quite a bit of work to do in order to ensure that our classroom sizes are reduced. Perhaps more teachers could be needed to balance scales in the educational fraternity. From a global context, we've benchmarked South Africa against international countries, namely Kenya, as well as the Philippines. Common factor for all these three countries is that they're all classified as developing countries. South Africa and these countries have similar attributes when it comes to socioeconomic status, infrastructure of schools, as well as the learner education ratio, which is higher than the recommended UNESCO ratio of 25:1. Now, in order to test mark our benchmarking process, we had to alter our research objective by adopting a global terminology used to identify location in socioeconomic terms, and that is called peri-urban. Our analysis also further reveals that our national matric pass rate, which is an average of 82.9%, actually falls below in suburban areas when compared to the Philippines as well as Kenya. Whilst in peri-urban areas, school leaving rates are lower in their peri-urban areas. This view is keeping up with trends, which we have observed locally, which shows that pass rates in suburban areas are higher compared to peri-urban areas, the same pattern which is observed for classroom size as well. Now, there are 6 common factors observed globally when benchmarking South Africa against international countries, when looking at schools in urban areas and those located in peri-urban areas. These factors which are infrastructure and facilities, learner education ratio, access to educational resources, socio-economic factors, extracurricular activities, as well as community and parental involvement. Very common observation is that schools in urban areas are probably at an advantage when compared to schools in townships. Now, in bringing it all together, we've benchmarked township schools against suburban schools. We've conducted interviews with educators. We distributed surveys to gather quantitative data. We also created a comprehensive rich picture of the current educational landscape. This holistic view actually allowed us to brainstorm effectively and organize our insights into an affinity diagram. Our affinity diagram categorizes various factors and allows a broad range of ideas to be organized so that they can be analyzed. Now, these factors are grouped into 5 main categories, which are resources, environmental factors, socioeconomic factors, community involvement, as well as academic performance. Their characteristics, resources, which are actually crucial for creating a conducive learning environment. Whilst from an environmental factor, schools near industrial areas or with poor environmental conditions normally face additional challenges compounded to their educational system. From a socioeconomic factor, these influences the students' ability to perform academically, whilst an active community involvement can actually enhance the educational experience. Lastly, all of these factors listed under the academic performance are critical for academic success. By organizing these factors into an affinity diagram, we can gain a clear picture of how these different elements interact with each other.
I'll take you through our criteria table. On this slide, we examined key criteria that distinguish suburban schools from township schools. These criteria highlight areas and evaluations on both suburban and township schools, such as funding per learner, extracurricular, school safety, facilities, just to name a few. Under facilities, in suburban schools, we see well-maintained infrastructure with modern technology, while in township schools, in contrast, having challenges like aging infrastructure, which are not properly maintained, limited resources, which can cause impact on learning environment. Under safety of the school, having suburban schools with advanced security measures like cameras and controlled access system. On the other hand, having township schools, their safety measures depending on availability of funds, which compromise the safety of the school. On this fishbone diagram, we have main issue on the head, categories going with factors on the bones of the fish. Under resources category, we have factors such as electricity. On environmental, having factors like noise pollution, academic performance, having factors like pass rates. After that, we applied a 5Y technique to drill deeper into the problem. We wanted to understand the underlying cause of this problem of geographic location affecting learner performance. On our first why does geographic location influence learner education performance? Which is caused by availability of resources and infrastructure, mostly in townships schools. Why does geographic location influence learner educational performance? Which is caused by availability of resources and infrastructure, mostly in township schools. Why township schools lack resources and infrastructure, where we see township schools only depending on governmental funding? Why do township schools depend only on government funding, where we see township schools mostly a non-paying fee? Why township schools are non-paying fee? To accommodate those who cannot afford to pay school fees. Why do we have to accommodate those who can't pay school fees? To bridge the educational gap and ensure that socioeconomic factors do not hinder township learners from accessing quality education.
Before I take you through the research question, let's go back to our problem statement. How does the geographic location of schools impact their performance? In the research that we were able to conduct, there were themes that we gathered: socioeconomic factors, educational resources, learner-education ratio. Then we were able to come up with this research question: what educational policy enhancements can be made to address the disparities between township and suburban schools exacerbated by socioeconomic factors? In conclusion, quality education is a fundamental human right, and it's crucial for sustainable development. Suburban schools benefit from better funding and resources, while township schools face inadequate facilities and limited resources. It is clear that geographic location influences socioeconomic conditions, with township schools or township areas experiencing poverty and barriers that hinder school performance. Team, let's take them through our personal learnings. Ephraim?
As LP, I have learned to evaluate sources and present data in a clear and engaging manner.
I have been able to fully express myself while connecting with those who share the same passion I have for education.
I have developed a strong set of skills in researching and analyzing a wide variety of data, allowing me to engage in a research project with a level of effectiveness that is both valuable and impactful.
My research skills have enhanced through the utilization of various tools, deepening my understanding and enabling me to effectively address challenges.
I've developed the ability to collaborate effectively within a team setting. I've also acquired more skills to conduct research and solve problems through the tools that we learned in class.
I've thoroughly enjoyed learning structured research methods, which have taught me to question assumptions and also achieve deeper understanding.